Hey everyone, welcome to my channel if you're new, and for those returning, welcome back. In today's episode of Psych with Zav, I will be talking about the approaches to psychology, which entailed the biological, cognitive, behavioral, psychodynamic, humanistic, socio-cultural, evolutionary, and biopsychosocial. So something that helped me while learning these approaches was to look at how the approach plays into test anxiety, which helped me grasp the concepts fully and then see how they're presented in real life. But before I dive into the approaches, I want to make sure we're all on the same page with the definition of approach. So the approach that my teacher gave to my class was an approach is a focus or perspective that involves certain beliefs about human behavior that may use a particular research method or technique, and the different approaches answer questions in different ways. In many circumstances, when evaluating a situation using an approach, it's very likely that there's more than one approach being used to back up this statement or action. So now that I've broken that part down, also, it's easier for you to understand. Before I start with the approaches, I also want to say that most of these, given the name of it, it's pretty predictable about what it's going to be about. But anyway, so the first approach we're going to be looking at is the biological. So this approach looks at the feelings, thoughts, and behaviors by looking at the biological makeup. And the example that relates this approach to test anxiety is when there's an increase of heart rates, or sweaty palms, or any type of physical changes, which is also known as physiology, and physiology is the way a living organism is supposed to function. So the next one is cognitive, and as you're probably guessing, it's got something to do with thinking. So this approach is based on examining the thought process and how it affects the way humans behave. This definition can be interpreted as the way we receive and decipher information and how we think we should use this information, basically like how we should respond to a situation. The cognitive approach relates to the test anxiety when it comes to excessive worrying, which has the potential to decrease reading accuracy and comprehension, and high levels of anxiety can also take a toll on an individual's competence and impair academic performance as a whole. So moving on to the next one, which is behavioral, and this approach looks at how surroundings can affect the mental state of an individual. Another way to interpret this is by how the environment affects an individual's behavior, especially when one learns a new behavior. An environment can either have a positive or negative kickback. B.F. Skinner's main intention for the behavioral approach was to be able to monitor and track the impact of the way an individual reacts to different environments and what's happening within these environments. So one way that the behavioral approach can help eliminate test anxiety is by writing down the thoughts you have pertaining to the test or exam. This allows an individual to understand how they are feeling by making them acknowledge the feelings and thoughts from their subconscious, which is a way to eliminate the amount of brain power that goes into negative thinking, allowing more brain power to go towards studying the content. So the next one is psychodynamic, which is the approach also known as psychoanalytic, and it examines emotions, behavior, and feelings along with the way it reflects what has happened in an individual within one's lifetime. So daily stresses have the ability to influence fears and desires that an individual has without realizing it, and chronic procrastination can also be a result of exposure to low self-esteem as a child. The next one is humanistic, which looks at how the individual views themselves and the ways in which their mind can authentically process one's surroundings and morals. Every person on earth is able to control their life by simply making decisions and following the steps to achieve the set task, which also allows them to maintain control of their well-being. The humanistic approach is regarded more as philosophy of life opposed to the science of human nature and behavior. In regards to test anxiety, if an individual believes in their academic capability, it can lead to higher academic achievement. So sociocultural is the next one, which evaluates behavioral tendencies and helps to break down why the brain works the way it does. An easier way to grasp this approach is to think about the ways that society impacts the way students perform academically. For example, in some studies, it's shown that Indian students encounter heightened level heightened levels of test anxiety as a result of cultural emphasis on academic achievements, parental and social pressure to perform, and other factors. Whereas American students experienced less test anxiety due to lower parental involvement in academics, parental promotion of independence, and personal responsibility. So for the next two approaches, which are the last two, there aren't examples relating these ones to test anxiety, but these ones should be relatively easier to grasp once they're explained. So the next one is the evolutionary approach, not effect. This approach examines the things that make us different from each other, like personality and adaptations that have become evident over time. And then the last one is the biopsychosocial approach. And this approach looks into the health aspect of the biological makeup along with the social and psychological factors, and how each of those, being social, psychological, and biological factors, can have the potential to influence an individual. So those are the 8 approaches to psychology. If you have any questions pertaining any of them, please feel free to ask me and I'll try my best to answer them, or I'll get an answer to you. But as far as for now, that's the end of today's episode of Psych with Zav, and I hope to see you in the next. I hope you'll tune in to the next one. So thank you.